Hello and welcome to a video ride-along of the 3.5 kilometer route we took on the Kidical Mass family bike ride through Convent Glen North in September of 2025. So this was September 27th, 2025. This video is going to be a detailed look at our route. We're going to have some bird's eye view shots. We're going to have some first-person POV shots. This ride, however, that I took a week or two ago that we're going to be narrating is not for fun, but we're instead going to be aiming to highlight exactly where specific targeted design changes to the route or along the route can make our streets safer and more accessible for our children and for the entire community. So to start us off, we started our ride at Father Richard Ward Park. That's what you can see right here. This playground was a great place to set up, giving the kids a chance to play before our ride, had lots of space for them to be able to do bubbles and draw chalk and decorate their bikes and that kind of thing. This also happens to be, because we knew it was such a convenient location, because it was also the place where we kicked off our pedal and play rides. I ran a weekly bike ride called Pedal and Play from the end of April all the way through to the end of September. It was approximately weekly. We probably did about 20 of them. I haven't counted the weeks, but it was basically weekly for that entire time, and it was an awesome experience. My kids got so much better and more comfortable at biking, as did a bunch of the other kids in the community. Some people just came out once or twice. Some people were there almost every week. It was really awesome. And this ride was intended to sort of get a big group out, cap off the season with an awesome, fun ride with lots of participants and lots of stuff to do before and after. So what we're going to do, I've got an aerial view here, and I've also got a video that I recorded later after the ride showing our route. And we're going to be going through the ride from the first person perspective, talking through some of the issues that I experienced trying to navigate the community, especially with my kids, and some of the ways that we can make this route better. The point here is not to say that everything is sharp, pokey things and danger around every corner, but just to highlight places where things could be improved. So right off the bat, you're going to notice as I start my ride here that you can see on the left-hand side of the screen here that there's a bit of a desire path going on connecting the schoolyard, which I was just on, up to the actual paved path. This would be really nice if it were connected, if it were just paved, if the school and city could work together to make that connection just more formal. It's a really nice desire path. You can see here that as we're turning, this is onto a brand new path, still decorated with chalk from some of the kids in the school and some of the older decorations from our actual Kidical Mass ride are there as well. So this is the way around that you would take if it was snowy and that desire path over there was covered. The fact that there is a shortcut there that's used all the time is evidence that this existing paved path, while great for other routes, is the long way around for kids and parents going to and from school, and inconvenient and insufficient. So I'm going to pause here actually just to highlight, point out that we're at the school here, so we're right alongside the school, and the path that we're on, hopefully you can tell from the video that this path is in desperate need of an upgrade. It's sort of falling apart. And it's already very narrow, and a lot of the weeds have started to encroach on what is already very narrow. If we go a little bit further as I'm talking here, you'll see that it just gets kind of worse as you get through here. It is a little better once you get up to the parking lot here, but this is sort of the worst part right here. This is definitely needed an upgrade. I don't know if you can tell from the camera, but I'm bouncing up and down wildly on this path. And so this is a part of a path that runs all the way from the river in front of me to the 174 highway behind me. And most of this route, actually all of this route is sort of in need of an upgrade at some point in the near future. The reason that this has taken longer than we would like and basically the reason it hasn't happened yet, or the main reason it hasn't happened yet, is that there's a sewer line running underneath this pathway, and their city's sort of still deciding what they want to do with that path, whether they need to, or not the path, with the sewer, whether or not they need to tear up the entire sewer and put something brand new in there, or whether they can sort of do an upgrade or do a changeover of the filter in the sewer line to be able to keep using it. And so for the meantime, we're just sort of waiting for them to make that decision and then do whatever they're going to do with the path here, because as you can see, it's clearly not up to standard. This can't be properly winter maintained, these paths. Sometimes they are anyways, but they can't be properly maintained. And even if they can, it's not really sufficient at this point. This would be so much better getting kids to and from school all along this entire route, which we're not actually going to take as part of the Kidical Mass route, which we'll talk about when we get there. But this is definitely in need of an upgrade, not only just for riding when the weather is nicer, but in the winter for walking or for cycling. Having it be able to be winter maintained and up to proper code is critical. So I'll start it up again here. And this is right after school started, so sort of in the 10 minutes after school. So most of the kids have gone, but you will still see some people making their way to and from school. So this path here is actually a little bit nicer than before, but you can see that between the years that have passed since this was put in and the trees that are right next to the path, it's pretty bumpy. It could definitely use some renewal. You can see here, actually, I'm going to stop right here. There's a couple things I want to talk about. Just back up a few seconds. You can see that there's a couple spots here where I think we could talk about our first potential improvements. So you can see over here on the left-hand side of the screen, this is the entrance to the parking lot for the school, and then right dead center in the screen, and then over here, this path gets broken up by the school parking lot going through it, as well as by the street going through it. This would be a really neat opportunity when it gets renewed to put in a continuous path, just basically have the asphalt path continue straight across the street and straight across this parking lot. These continuous streets are starting to be used a lot more in Ottawa and other places around North America and the world. These effectively communicate to drivers and to cyclists and pedestrians who has the right of way and who is sort of being most strongly considered when we're talking about the safety of roads. And especially given the fact that we're right next to a school, I think there's a few places here. So first of all, across the sidewalk here at the entrance to this parking lot, I think it'd be a great opportunity for a continuous sidewalk. So drivers, whether it's teachers or whether it's parents, picking up or dropping off their kids or just coming to school to teach, entering into the parking lot, they would have to go up and over the sidewalk, which is raised from the level of the road, so that people walking will have a nice, comfortable, straight walk. People pushing strollers won't be navigating, sort of angled driveways as they're going up. And like I said, it communicates who has the right of way and whose safety we're sort of most considering and who we're most thinking about when building these things. Continuous sidewalk here, and then as well, making this path continuous all the way through to the other side. Just having that be the unbroken line of transportation and cars, especially cars going into this parking lot, having to go up and over a bump to keep the path continuous would be a huge step forward in safety and just making this a little more accessible. As well, like I said, when you get to the road here, I think it'd be a great opportunity again for a continuous path or a continuous sidewalk, however you want to build it. Just giving kids the chance to navigate independently, to get around on their own as much as possible. It's been so great for my kids to be able to do that. Over the last couple of years, they're getting better on their bikes and they're getting more independent. It's just one more thing that makes it easier to be able to, as a parent, say, yes, you can go ahead to the next spot. If cars are going to be much more likely to stop when they're more aware that people are potentially going to be crossing here. So that's those three. The other thing I wanted to mention here while we're paused here next to the school is the concept of school streets. So a lot of schools, in particular in Ottawa, for the context of this video, but again, all around North America and the world, a lot of schools are looking at implementing as many different, car traffic calming things around schools. This is sort of something that if you drive your kids to school and you're sort of dead set on driving your kids all the way to school, can feel a little bit like, more and more limiting. And it feels like, haven't we done enough? But one of the nice things about school streets, which is the concept of basically closing the spot in front of the school to through traffic during peak periods, during the 30 minutes kind of wrapping around the beginning and ending of the school day. This will be different. This will be different length and at different times, depending on school, the sort of opening and closing hours of the school. But what this does is you can do something as temporary as having a couple of staff who are already out on duty, wearing high vis, sort of just being in the road at either end of the school, either end of the closed portion of the road, kind of directing traffic. And, if a bus has to come through, or, if on the rare occasion that if something like a fire truck or an emergency vehicle has to get through, these people can easily move to the side. But otherwise, the expectation would be that this is not a through road during this period. And it's just something that, like I said, a lot of places in the city are starting to look at, and this would be a perfect spot for that. Just gives the kids more room to play. There's a big grassy area out front. One of the things that I've heard from places that have implemented a school street is that the big green area in front of a school that is currently, for the most part, not really considered a place for kids to meet and talk and play, can actually become that, because that sort of pressure and that the traffic and urgency that having a bunch of drivers on there create just makes it a nicer place to be. The school here, De Voyageur School, has already implemented what they call a kiss and ride. So that's where any parents that are dropping off their kids can actually go in the parking lot. You can see on the very far right-hand side, the orange cone there, indicating that you can't, the intent here is that you're not going into the playground, or not the playground, into the parking lot. But if you do want to drop off your kid, you can navigate to the entryway where the buses come in, and then pull up alongside the buses and to form a queue, basically, and you sort of all stop as a group, and all the kids get out of the car, and they all make their way across past the cars and past the school buses. And then once all the kids are out of the way, then they let all the cars go out, and then they bring in a new set of cars to come and do the same thing. Basically, the intent here is already to have as few people dropping off their kids by car as possible. And this would just be another step in that direction. And the school, again, actually just recently in the last month or so, due to new rules in Ontario around parking near daycare facilities, have already blocked off the 6 parking spots. Actually, we had some back earlier in the video. The 6 parking spots closest to the daycare and preschool parts of the school. And so again, this would just be sort of one more thing closer to traffic to make it safer for kids to be able to go out and make their way to school, if not fully independently and safely, then with their parents, who are, again, potentially using active transportation. They're potentially walking with their kid and then going to the bus to go to work, or whatever the case may be, but essentially trying to make it easier for those who are choosing to reduce their driving to be able to get around. So we're going to continue here. And what you'll see here is actually, as I unpause the video, I actually make a mistake, which is funny because it's the exact same mistake that one of the leaders on our ride made, which is I initially, even though this isn't the route we took for the Kidical Mass ride, I actually go straight through this intersection in this video, in my ride through. But I did want to take the opportunity as I go through and then circle back and go down the actual correct route, just to talk about some of the issues around this particular, the wayfinding around this particular thing. So first of all, if there were signs showing, where you can get to from here, that would be really handy. So I'm actually supposed to turn right here. I didn't turn right. I instead went straight through. Had the opportunity to say hi to some neighbors that are on their bikes up here. And, but what you're going to hopefully notice as I get across up to this little crossing here is just the absolute dire straits that this path is in. I'm going to pause it on the spot where it's the worst right here. So this path is just like falling off the side of the path. I can't tell if it's the sewer here that's kind of degraded to the point that everything is just sinking in, but it's really hard. And if you are a kid, and I know because my kid's just finished with training wheels, if you're a kid with training wheels, this is an absolute nightmare because the entire right side of the path just sort of drops off at a pretty steep angle. So I just want to point this out, that there is a nice way. This is actually a great through path to get through to the river. This isn't the path we take, but because of where we're going and the route we wanted to take, we chose not to use this particular route. Although you can get to where we're going indirectly if you take a right up here, using the local residential street. That's one street down from the route we take. But you'll notice as you go through, we're taking the most efficient route, but it could be much more efficient than it is. So we're going to sort of speed through here as I get turned around and then head back onto our correct route. One thing I'll actually talk about here as I'm turning around is the other thing you'll notice if you're paying attention for it is there's no path lighting whatsoever on this path. And so it's a little bit sketchy walking through here at night. And I'm, a man in my late 30s. So I can't even imagine what it would be like for someone in high school or in university, especially, somebody that's potentially a lot smaller than me and potentially a lot more at risk of having something happen to them. Having path lighting here would be really incredible. So I'm just going to turn around here, sort of intending to pick it back up where I left off. So I'm just going to do a little loop and then we will continue on the path. So you can see the school bus drop off there. So as I turn around, you're gonna be able to see the route we take. We're gonna kind of do a little jog to the right and then immediate left. This is another connection, the connection to this road and then through to the other park that we're going to connect to this is really a missed opportunity. As I turn left here, I'm actually going to pause it just briefly. So as I turn left here onto this path, every time I do it, I think about how this is the most direct, the route that I'm taking is the most direct route to get from that path that I was just on through to connect to the other path. And it's not to say that Arrowhead, the street that I'm going to be taking, is a busy street, because it's not. And it's actually perfectly safe to there's no cars are not gaining speed here. There's lots of parked cars. There's lots of, sort of reasons for cars not to be able to go very fast. But what I wanted to highlight is just the difficulty of making these little connections. So you have to cross the fairly busy street with, there's a painted line on either side to sort of give you a bike lane technically that most drivers respect, but actually crossing at the intersection where I just was, there's no painted lines. There's just, you just go across, you just walk. And, from a perspective of a child that's not on a Kidical Mass bike ride or just is alone or with their parent, they're probably, unless they're quite comfortable after a year or two of cycling confidently, they're probably just going to take the sidewalk here, which is obviously potentially detrimental if people are out walking, because then there's a potential for collision there. So having some way to navigate this, and again, signage would be really nice to be able to indicate that you can get to the park through here, but just there's more we could do considering walking and cycling more heavily than it currently is to be able to navigate this area. So I'm going to go through here, but yeah, this is something I think about a lot when I go through here is how is a kid expected to get from the path we were just on to the path we're going to? So again, like I said, there's always cars parked here. It's garbage day, so there's a bunch of recycling and garbage out as well. This is a very quiet route. There's no real issue here. I don't even know that I've ever really seen a car moving on this street. It's very quiet, very residential. I do note there's always a lot of cars, and it's interesting to me that despite everyone having a driveway with room for multiple cars, there's still always cars on the street, suggesting that maybe the issue with the suburbs and car-dependent suburbia in general is not that there's not enough parking, it's that there's just too many cars. I'm going to pause the video again here as we get to this connection. So this is the other end of our little jaunt onto the road initially. So you can see we come up to a stop sign. The road connecting here is Vineyard Drive, and it's a fairly fast road. It's kind of windy, but cars definitely tend to go 40 the entire way. And so what you end up with is kind of a blind corner here, where you can't really see what's going on either side, and you kind of have to get pretty far out, maybe even into the crosswalk to be able to actually see what's going on, not only when you're driving, but even when you're on a bike. And so what I think, again, what I would suggest here would be really nice would be to have another continuous sidewalk here, just or continuous path, whatever you want to call it, but connect this sidewalk to the path over here in a more meaningful way than just say, having it technically be possible to walk across. And again, signage here would be pretty nice. There's no sign here indicating that there's a park path or that you can get through to the shopping center, that you can get through to the grocery store, that kind of thing. It's basically a kilometer or less. You're a kilometer or less from the grocery store here. If you have a bike with any storage, you can easily make a grocery trip. It takes less than 5 minutes to get there. But there's no real way to know unless you already know it. So I'm going to continue here, but just, yeah, again, as I come to a stop and I'm looking both ways for traffic, this is something that most kids won't be able to successfully navigate unless they're really experienced and willing to, go out of their way to look both ways. As I make it out on the pathway here, a couple things to keep in mind. I'm not going to necessarily pause too much here, but we're going to come up to a playground and park here. It's a really great connection for kids. One of the things I noticed when we were flagging this route the night before the ride is that, again, there's no lighting whatsoever on this entire area, this entire stretch. And the spots where there are benches, we actually did see people on the benches, using the benches when it's literally pitch black out, to the point that we didn't realize there were people there until we were like 5 feet away from them. So, in terms of safety and in terms of just making these paths more accessible outside of daylight hours, especially as we're getting into winter, and especially as we, again, like to have most of these paths winter maintained, that would be really nice to have, is just some consideration for the lighting situation here, which is currently just, not really factored in. You can see there's a path over on the left there that goes into the community, this is actually pretty well connected. There's a basketball court on one side, a volleyball court on the other. There's a playground here on the left, as well as on the right, as well as a splash pad, and then another connection to the street. This is not too bad. Again, these are fairly quiet streets, pretty good connectivity. It's mainly the lighting here that is a big issue, and also these paths are pretty old and do need an upgrade, mostly in terms of the width. They're pretty narrow. They're definitely not, designed to be the right width for a bi-directional multi-use path. They're really just designed as walking paths. There's some seating, and you can see, again, these do branch off to the community, so it's not like residents nearby have no way to get to this. That they do. Although it's definitely lacking once you get past that connection, that sort of T-junction right there. There's definitely a lot less connections to the streets once you get past there. I think there might be one more set, but yeah, it's pretty limited at this point. And we do have quite a ways to go here. I'm just to point out, I'm deliberately going quite slow on this ride, just to indicate I'm in most spots I'm using either no power or very little power, not specifically to show the speed at which a child or a young person would typically be riding, or a less experienced cyclist. I could go faster on these paths, but I honestly find the more that I ride and the less that I drive, I actually find that I prefer going a slower speed, and it just makes the ride overall nicer. It's quieter, it's calmer. If I do need to approach a pedestrian, whether they're coming towards me or moving away from me, I find it a little bit easier to just be going slower. And again, it takes 30 seconds, a minute longer, so it's not really slowing me down at all. As we come up to the end of this path, we meet up with Orléans Boulevard. You'll notice that it's pretty wonky. The part, I think, right here where they start, where the path has sort of been redone recently. They didn't do a super good job, so it's kind of wavy. And I'm actually going to pause it here so I can talk about a couple things before we get up to the street of Orléans Boulevard, where you can see the buses and stuff there. This is right at the beginning of the day for the high school there. So I thought it was an interesting opportunity to talk about what happens as we approach the street and as we go onto it on our ride here. So obviously we went on a Saturday morning, so there was no school traffic. It was extraordinarily quiet on these roads. One of the reasons that I think, one of the things I want to advocate for is that these roads don't need to be 4 lanes. They could very easily be 2 traffic lanes, and with a lot more space to do things with bikes and active transportation. But even during school, a lot of kids in high school drive, in part because they think a lot of kids think it's cool to drive and think it's like the cool thing to do to have a car to be able to drive to school. But it doesn't feel right that as a parent you are sort of expected that, when you're 16, you either buy your kid a car or you provide them use of a car just to get to school, which is often pretty close to where you live. And it really feels like this is mostly in part to just, limited other transportation options or limited other good, safe transportation options. And so there actually is a crosswalk. It's not a raised crosswalk, but there is a signalized crosswalk right here at the end of the path. This is the curb we use to get down off the path onto the road. It works pretty well, but it's basically just multi-use path here straight ahead. There's a couple of branches off the path, and then there's just a regular old bumpy, broken up sidewalk, and then this path. It could definitely be a little clearer to just have some desire path straightened out along this way to make this transition from the path to the road and then to the school easier. But overall, very little to complain about. I will note that as we're coming up here, it's a little hard to tell, but it really feels like a school bus could have stopped instead of going through an intersection as these people you can see up at the top here about to cross. But again, like, you know, it's a school day. These are high school kids, so they're pretty responsible. But it looks to me like they push this button and then this bus just goes right through. They sort of wait there. Again, I'm going fairly slow here because, you know, I'm aware that there are pedestrians coming, aware that it's the start of school, so there's lots of vehicular traffic. This car is waiting for the pedestrian to cross, which is great. And then I just sort of go for it. The first thing you'll notice as we get onto the road, and I'll just pause here for a sec, although not too long because there's there's quite a bit of path along this road and then along the Jeanne d'Arc that we're going to get to. The first thing that I notice when I get onto this road is that this lane, this outer lane that's got bus stops along it and is designed to be wide enough for a bus by a lot. This lane is just way wider than it needs to be. The speed limit here is 50. It probably could do pretty easily with being 40. But yeah, I just wanted to point out the really wide lanes here. And when we talk about road design changes, one of the things we look at is, are lanes much wider and straighter than they really need to be? And are they making traffic be able to feel safer driving at speeds that they really shouldn't be driving given the circumstances of right next to a school or right next to a park or a playground or anything like that? So the fact that this is 50, it's definitely slower than 60, which we'll see is the speed limit part of the road up ahead. But this road can definitely be driven very comfortably at 50 or 60 or 70 or even 80. Honestly, you can feel pretty safe doing that, even though, like I said, you're going past a school, you're going past potentially multiple schools on your roadway here, and how much time you're really saving with this driving slower at this for this few kilometer section of roadway. So get started again here. One of the things that I noticed when I started on this particular part, and I'm hearing now in the video, is that it's way louder here than it is on the path. And this person close passes me for no real reason. I can't really tell if that's just because I went onto the roadway when they were in front of me. But there was no need for that close pass. It wasn't super close, but it was definitely unnecessary given this is a wide 2-lane road with almost no traffic on it. So yeah, we're approaching here. This is there's a metro up here and a bunch of, you know, pharmacy, drugstore, dollar store, a bunch of restaurants and things. This is a really great place to be, and it's pretty difficult, especially if you have kids, to get across this road without having them just ride on the sidewalk most of the way, which is usually just what we do. My kids, I've said, if you start to feel comfortable as you're getting older, you can come on the road with me and we'll just be safe together. But otherwise, they just go on the sidewalk. So I'm going to pause it again here because we're at sort of the most busy part of this particular ride. So here we have the intersection of Orléans Boulevard and Jeanne d'Arc Boulevard. So this is a signalized 4-lane by 4-lane intersection. And basically what we had during the ride was a marshal, a very experienced cyclist who lives just down the road from here, standing at the corner and just sort of ushering everyone on the ride through, having them turn right. We picked this route specifically to be visible to anybody that happened to be out at the time. To keep us all safe, we're only making this right turn. So we're not going through this intersection. We're not trying to turn left or go straight through this busy intersection. We're just turning right. So if the light's red, you just come to a stop and then you can go again. Like I said, it's on Saturday morning, it was really not busy. So there's not really any need to look for cross traffic when the light was red. Just stop and then keep going. But this was definitely the busiest spot. Now this intersection is slated for redesign at some point in the hopefully near future. We're hoping for this to be reduced from a 4-lane road to a 2-lane road and have some cycling infrastructure put in here to make it a little safer. Hopefully we get a full protected Dutch style intersection. I don't know if we're going to actually get that, but that would be the hope. And you can see here that as I turn right, we're entering a playground zone. So this is a zone where it's 40. I guess not a playground zone, I guess it's a school zone. And you can see if you can look through the high contrast or the high brightness, there is a municipal speed camera up ahead. This is something that I want to share the road sign for bikes. Great. The camera that you'll see up ahead is actually one being targeted by Doug Ford for removal, along with all the other speed cameras in Ontario. This is something that the speeders in the community complain about quite a bit. oddly enough, I haven't heard people who don't speed really complain about it. One of the interesting points, and actually I'm just going to pause it here while we're looking at this. One of the things that I specifically want to talk about while we're talking about the speed camera here is the fact that a lot of the arguments around speed cameras in general, and especially this one around a school, right in front of a school, is that, a lot of people who are against having the speed camera here think it's unfair that they're getting tickets for speeding, is that, they say, I'm fine with the speed restrictions and even the camera during the kind of 15 minutes before to 15 minutes after the start and end of school. But other than that, it's just a cash grab. And I just really wanted to get across the point that it feels very unfair to me as a person trying to raise kids and have them be have independent mobility and just independence in general, to say that, it's like, I totally support kids being able to get to school safely, whether they want to walk or whether they want to bike or scooter or whatever. But if they want to go like after school, they can come home, but then there's not going to be any safety for them when they leave the house at 5 p.m. because it's not right after school. And so I just need to be able to continue to go down this road as fast as possible. One of the biggest issues facing our society right now is the isolation that a lot of people are feeling. And one of the things that causes this is kids getting out of school, going straight home and not leaving it unless they have like a very structured activity. One of the nice things about speed limits and speed cameras that are being enforced 24/7, or at least, ostensibly 24/7. I think this one is seasonal, and that it isn't in use over the summer, which I find kind of bizarre again, because again, kids go out in the summer, they leave their house during the day in the summer. But yeah, that's sort of one of the things that I find a little weird about this argument, is that it sort of implies that kids shouldn't or can't leave the house unless it's to go to or from school. And they definitely don't need to go and do that safely. Again, a lot of the time it comes down to kind of what I call a lack of imagination, in that, if you drive your kids to school and you drive your kids everywhere, that's just sort of what everyone does, even though it's definitely not. There are lots of kids and lots of families that bike around this neighborhood and deserve to be able to bike around this neighborhood, which is one of the reasons that we want to advocate and keep advocating for this. All right, we're going to fast forward about 4 hours. This is about 4 hours after I started or ended recording the last clip there. We're going to pick back up where we left off, and I'm going to start this clip again, and we're going to keep going down Jeanne Boulevard. So one of the things that I wanted to note as we're going through down this road is just keep an eye on how wide it is. In most places here, it's literally 30 meters wide or more. There's plenty of room for bike infrastructure. The road doesn't need to be 4 lanes. It can easily be 2 lanes. There's more room for more sidewalks, The other thing, I'm actually going to pause it here while we're in view of this sign, because you can see here that the speed limit on Jeanne d'Arc is actually kind of a big topic of discussion recently in the community, not just because there's a speed camera like behind us out of frame now, but because specifically in like a 5-kilometer stretch of this road, the speed limit goes from 60 at the highway down to 40 through a new roundabout in front of a school, and then it goes back to 60, and then the speed camera here it becomes 40 again, and then it turns into 50 a little bit further behind us from the perspective of this video. And so a lot of the complaints that come around about this road are not only that it's designed for much faster speed than you're even allowed to go in most places, but it also, the speed limit like jumps up and down, and the camera's only active at certain times of the year, so there's a lot of confusion. I usually end up going between 40 and maybe 50 for most of the road anyways, even if the speed limit technically is 60, just because I don't want to get a ticket. I don't really want to speed. And anytime I'm using this road, I'm not going far anyways. So like I'm adding 30 seconds to maybe a minute tops to my drive or bike or wherever I'm going. So yeah, it is what it is. I mean, let's play a little bit more and then we're going to stop at this intersection here. Okay, the reason I wanted to stop at this intersection is because it's a very quiet intersection. You can tell from this usual traffic here that the majority of time anybody ever gets backed up at this light, it is because the light timings are completely too long for what they actually need to be. You can see here that the light is green. These cars have been waiting. This car at the back here is probably just going to turn at some point after I go. The other two cars are just either pulling up or waiting here, and going straight or turning left from this intersection is just terrible. I would complain about this in the next intersection as a driver, as a cyclist. It just sucks for everybody. Even walking, it sucks to cross the road because the light timing is just really long, and this doesn't, like, for the traffic volume, a light is not helping here. It's actually making things less efficient, less effective than they could be. And so honestly, the thing that I've been pitching here when I've had conversations in the community is just, we should just have a cheap roundabout here. It doesn't need to be like this super, multi-million-dollar roundabout that's like really nicely designed, especially not immediately. But I think just like a low cost, temporary, like screw down a big piece of whatever material in the center of the road as a ring, and then like bring in a lot of the areas, make it 2 lanes. There's lots of room for things like cycling infrastructure, much wider sidewalks, that kind of thing within the existing curb pattern. And you can, use some road diet, use some traffic calming mechanisms in here to just slow this down. And because it's a roundabout, you have the added benefit that you can take the traffic lights out at that point, or at least deactivate them, turn them off, and have the thing just operate as a roundabout, at which point you no longer need, it's not powered, and, the right turns and going straight through the intersection is nothing. This is what I'd love to see. It would be so much easier for families, especially with little kids or just kids in general, to be able to cross here if it's a roundabout than if it's operating as this intersection, which is pretty daunting even to adults that are not that experienced in cycling. So this is one of the things that I would love to see in this area. Yeah, so I don't know how long this car's been waiting here. It's in the middle of the crosswalk. But yeah, it doesn't need to be that way. So we're going to go through here. Up until recently, like I think over this summer, this road, this lane especially, was completely falling apart. You can see a bunch of new asphalt patches. There were some gigantic potholes in this area, but they have fixed them up. Something that only happens when big holes get to be extraordinarily giant. We're going to come up here. Probably let's fast forward a little bit. This is just the kind of thing, again, the traffic volumes here absolutely do not require 4 lanes at any point in time. This is not quite rush hour, but just at the tail end of the busiest possible time. And this is standard high traffic volumes for this road. Even if there were cars going through one lane the whole time, they could still easily manage this, especially if we had roundabouts, so there weren't traffic bottlenecks that were actually the things that are slowing people down in the area. So we're coming up here to the next intersection. I would give this the same treatment. Nobody's specifically asking me, but I would give this same roundabout treatment as the other one. You can see here that there's a 40 upcoming sign because the school zone. This light actually does change as I get to it. So all these cars that have been waiting here for who knows how long are going to get a chance to go. And I guess I'll keep talking while we watch this go through. So again, I would just have this be I would make this road 2 lanes, and I would put in a roundabout, nice low cost roundabout. Doesn't need to be a multi-million-dollar complete redo, at least not immediately. When the entire road needs to be replaced, we can certainly look at that. But that is what I would love to see. Our only, actually, well, I'll pause it here. On the right over here, this is the only mixed use area not zoned for exclusively residential, other than there's one plot over here just out of sight that used to be a gas station and is now a Habitat for Humanity development. This is the only thing that is actually like within a kilometer and a half of me that has any sort of stores, and there's one restaurant in there. There's like a hairdresser and a physio place, and this Royal Fresh Market was open for about 4 weeks. And yeah, this space is definitely vastly underused. So we'll start again. We're coming up here in the home stretch. There's a fire station up ahead on the left-hand side of the road. There is a there's a school again. We're coming up here, and I want you to keep an eye out. There's a path, a multi-use path on this side of the road, and there's a multi-use path over on this side of the road. We're just going to stop it here. So what we have here, we just went through an intersection. Coming up ahead, there's a path here, and there's a path over here. I think that this makes an absolutely perfect spot for a raised crossing, which is something that, according to the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, the HT, I think is what it's called, you are not allowed to put up a pedestrian crossing that is within 200 meters of a signalized intersection. I'm not exactly sure why that rule exists, but I think it's pretty silly because 200 meters is a really long way. And if you get in a position like this, where I think it's like 200 meters on the nose to one of the signalized intersections and about 190 or 185 or something meters to the other one. I believe the one we're coming from is closer. That means if you add that together, the distance it takes to walk from one side here down the sidewalk to the crossing and then come back, you multiply that by 2, you're at like 370 meters that you have to walk out of your way to not have to just either jaywalk here or put in a pedestrian crossing so you can cross here safely. And I'll note again here, there's a school right here. There's the school we started at is just out of frame, like less than a kilometer over this way. Jeanne d'Arc is like widely known in the community, especially for anybody that has younger kids, as just this gully, this giant valley separating the two halves of Convent Glen North, because it's just so difficult to cross. It's this massive 4-lane road with a speed limit most of the way through at 60, and there's very few ways that are considered safe to cross. The roundabout that we have now, that's just up ahead off screen, is basically the first safe way that we've had, and it takes some getting used to, obviously, because it's a big change from a signalized intersection that we're used to with just lights. But it's just been a massive change to make it easier for kids to cross. Again, either semi-independently or much more independently than they could. But yeah, the raised crossing here is currently not allowed according to the Highway Traffic Act. And another thing that they have talked about that I've heard as and I won't call them excuses, but reasons why they're not able to do this is that with the road curving as it does, although you can see from here that it's very easy it's not curving so much that it's in any way challenging to see if there's somebody trying to cross. When it's 60, when the speed limit's 60 here, which is off school hours, it is relatively difficult to see around this corner, I'm told. And so if the speed limit changes that are being planned and discussed right now go through and are sort of finalized and put in place, then what you end up with is the opportunity with the limit here 40, and again my hypothetical roundabout at the other intersection, we're now not in violation of the Highway Traffic Act, able to put in a raised crossing here. I would love to see a raised pedestrian crossing here. It would be used so much around school time and just on the weekends and all the time by kids and families crossing from one half of the park to the other. Right now, they're just completely separated by this gulf. We're going to see here that you can actually see that some foreshadowing here. You're going to see there's a couple here that we are going to meet a little bit later. So like I said, not only, actually, I didn't say, but one of the things I wanted to highlight by going on this ride is the absurdity of trying to get up on this path. We talked for a while about trying to build or procure some kind of ramp to be able to get up this curb. But given the fact that there's going to be some young and inexperienced riders on this ride, and there's going to be a lot of us, it didn't really make sense to try and build and put down a temporary ramp up here to get up onto the curb. And so what we ended up doing is going past, about 200 feet past where the path is, and then at the fire station up ahead, going up onto the fire station driveway, and then cutting back, and then coming back another 200 feet to join up with the path. So you'll see that here. And again, on the left-hand side here, just watch this couple, because they're going to come into play later. You can see them getting ready to jaywalk right now. So we come up here, right up here is where the roundabout is. So there's actually a right lane. The right lane ends right here, just past where we went on our ride. I'm hoping this can just tie into new infrastructure when they redo the entire rest of the thing. But yeah, here's the fire station. So I'm going to be preparing to go up on the driveway. and then making my little U-turn. Again, sidewalk here, I kind of have to use the sidewalk to join up with the path. If there are pedestrians walking here, as there literally are right there, you can see them jaywalking, something I've done many, many times. You will see that, it can cause conflicts. Like they're doing something they're technically not supposed to do. I'm doing something I'm technically not supposed to do. Kind of have this little negotiation here. And funny enough, as I am pedaling away onto my path on my route back to the school, which is just out of sight here, I can hear them. You can't hear it in the video. I'm going to pause it, but I can hear them talking about how there should be a connection here between these two paths because they've just come from the other direction where there's a path there. They obviously live in the area, and I can actually hear them talking about the fact that there's a path there. And so my community association and advocacy brain immediately goes, well, if they're talking about it and I'm recording a video about it, what I should really do is go and chat with them. So you see here I do a little U-turn. I go and catch up to them, and I won't bring them into this video at all, but just leave it to say, we talked about it for a bit. Hey, were you guys talking about the paths here? Yeah. Okay, well, I'll let you continue your walk. Yeah. But thanks for stopping to chat. All right, we'll pick this back up here. Just let them enjoy their rest of their walk. And we'll make our way down. Again, the only thing that I would note here on this particular path, which was again redone, it's probably twice as wide as it was before, is that it could use some lighting at night. And it is winter maintained now. That I've been bugging the city for a couple of years, and they've been doing a good job for the last couple of years since it was redone. But having some lighting at night, this is just dark. And in the winter, especially, it's dark like 4:30, 5 o'clock. And people like to walk in the evenings. It's a nice exercise. And so having some lighting along this path would be really, really nice. And that is pretty much it. So again, that was a 3 to maybe 3.5 kilometer route through my neighborhood. We could have stopped at a number of different destinations along the way, but this was our Kidical Mass route, going through some areas that are just nice connections between to connect the neighborhood, and then some other ones that are more to highlight issues and point out where things could be improved, especially when it comes to accessibility and road safety for less experienced cyclists. So we're coming back up to where we ended our ride on the 27th, and I'm going to pull back in here at the end of the video. You can see here again, just reminding you one last time of the desire path that gets cut through there all the time. It ends up being walked through in the winter. So thanks so much for watching, and I really appreciate your time and following me along on this ride. If you have any questions or any other places that I should be covering more closely, keeping an eye on in Orleans, feel free to let me know, and be sure to check out theneworleans.ca. Thanks a lot. Bye.